नमस्कार। किसान वीर महाविद्यालय वई में आयोजित अंतर्राष्ट्रीय कॉन्फ्रेंस जिसकी थीम है रिसेंट ट्रेंड्स इन ज्योग्राफी में मैं आज स्कूल ड्रॉप आउट प्रॉब्लम इन गर्ल चाइल्ड ऑफ वेस्टर्न राजस्थान ए केस स्टडी ऑफ बीकानेर डिस्ट्रिक्ट पर अपना पेपर प्रेजेंट करने जा रही हूँ। मैं अपने पेपर की शुरुआत एडलर एवं मेयर के कथन के साथ करना चाहूँगी। To the extent that the search for the best education persists, the search for the best society persists, and in the measures that the best education is achieved, will the best society be achieved। अर्थात जब हम सर्वश्रेष्ठ शिक्षा को प्राप्त करेंगे तभी हम सर्वश्रेष्ठ समाज की स्थापना कर पाएंगे। लेकिन ये सर्वश्रेष्ठ शिक्षा प्राप्त करने की दिशा में हमें अनेक कठिनाइयों का सामना करना पड़ता है। बात जब पश्चिमी राजस्थान की आती है तो वहाँ पर बालिकाओं को या तो स्कूल भेजा ही नहीं जाता या यदि स्कूल में वो किसी तरीके से दाखिला ले लेती है तो भी उन्हें अपनी शिक्षा पूरी करने में अनेक कठिनाइयों का सामना करना पड़ता है और बहुत सी बालिकाएं स्कूल में बीच में ही अपनी शिक्षा अधूरी छोड़ देती है, अर्थात स्कूल से ड्रॉप आउट हो जाती है। अपने पेपर के लिए मैंने स्टडी एरिया बीकानेर डिस्ट्रिक्ट लिया है। बीकानेर डिस्ट्रिक्ट राजस्थान के नॉर्थ वेस्ट पार्ट में आता है। ये 27 डिग्री 11 मिनट उत्तरी अक्षांश से 29 डिग्री 3 मिनट उत्तरी अक्षांश एवं 71 डिग्री 52 मिनट पूर्वी देशांतर से 74 डिग्री 15 मिनट पूर्वी देशांतर के बीच में अवस्थित है। इसका ज्योग्राफिकल एरिया 30,247.90 स्क्वायर वर्ग किलोमीटर है। आप इसमें लोकेशन देख सकते हैं। भारत में राजस्थान की लोकेशन दिखाई गई है तथा राजस्थान में बीकानेर जिले की स्थिति आपको दिखाई गई है। बीकानेर जिले में ये जो तहसील है उनकी लोकेशन दिखाई गई है, मुख्य रूप से खाजूवाला, छतरगढ़, लूनकंसर, पूगल, बीकानेर, डूंगरगढ़, कोलायत एवं नोखा तहसील। मेरी ये जो स्टडी है इसका उद्देश्य बालिकाओं की शिक्षा को बढ़ावा देने के लिए वर्तमान में जो भी संस्थागत तंत्र या सेवाएं उपलब्ध है उनको समझना, पश्चिमी राजस्थान में शिक्षा की क्या स्थिति है उसको समझना, बालिका शिक्षा के समक्ष क्या क्या संभावित बाधाएं आ रही है उनको पहचानना, माध्यमिक और उच्चतर माध्यमिक कक्षाओं के अंदर बालिकाएं बीच में ही स्कूल क्यों छोड़ देती है उनके कारणों की जांच करना इत्यादि है। इस पेपर को तैयार करने के लिए मैंने प्राइमरी एवं सेकेंडरी दोनों डाटा का यूज़ किया है। प्राइमरी डाटा के अंदर मैंने फील्ड सर्वे किया और प्रश्नावली और साक्षात्कार विधि दोनों का उपयोग करके क्वेश्चनरीज तैयार की, इंटरव्यूज़ लिए डायरेक्ट और उनके आधार पर रैंडम सैम्पलिंग करके जो भी आंकड़े हैं वो इकट्ठे किए। और सेकेंडरी डाटा के अंदर विभिन्न जो सरकारी विभाग है उनकी रिपोर्ट्स जैसे कि ह्यूमन डेवलपमेंट रिपोर्ट, रूरल डेवलपमेंट डिपार्टमेंट की रिपोर्ट्स, सेंसस की रिपोर्ट्स और विभिन्न सरकारी जो वेबसाइट्स है उनकी मदद से मैंने ये अपने आंकड़े इकट्ठे किए हैं। इसमें आप चार्ट में देख सकते हैं कि राजस्थान के अंदर ये सोशल कैटेगरी के अकॉर्डिंग ड्रॉप आउट रेट दिखा रही है, जहां पर हम देखते हैं कि प्राथमिक शिक्षा के अंदर ड्रॉप आउट रेट कम है। नियर बाय आप देखते हैं कि ओवरऑल राजस्थान के अंदर 5.19 ड्रॉप आउट रेट है। वहीं पे जैसे ही हम अपर प्राइमरी जाते हैं वहां पे भी ड्रॉप आउट रेट कम है, लेकिन सेकेंडरी स्तर पर आते ही ड्रॉप आउट रेट बहुत अधिक हो जाती है। आप यहाँ देख सकते हैं 12.69 अर्थात ओवरऑल। और ये रेट आप देखेंगे कि सभी कैटेगरी में, चाहे जनरल हो, एससी हो, एसटी, ओबीसी, कोई भी कैटेगरी हो, सभी कैटेगरीज के अंदर प्राइमरी और अपर प्राइमरी में ड्रॉप आउट की रेट कम है, लेकिन जैसे ही हम सेकेंडरी स्तर पर आते हैं ड्रॉप आउट की रेट बहुत अधिक हो जाती है। बीकानेर यदि हम जिले की बात करें तो यहाँ पे भी हम देखेंगे कि यहाँ पर प्राइमरी और अपर प्राइमरी में ड्रॉप आउट रेट कम है, वहीं पे सेकेंडरी में ड्रॉप आउट रेट की बहुत अधिक हो जाती है। जब प्राइमरी सर्वे किया गया तब जो स्टूडेंट्स थे उनका पूछा गया कि मेल चाइल्ड कितने स्कूल में हैं, तो 32.5% जो मेल या बालक थे वो गवर्नमेंट स्कूल्स में थे और 67.5% बच्चे प्राइवेट स्कूल में पढ़ते थे। वहीं पर अधिकतर जो बालिकाएं थी वो गवर्नमेंट स्कूल में ही पेरेंट्स उनको भेजते थे। 87.5% बालिकाएं गवर्नमेंट स्कूल में जा रही थी। जब उन जो भी रेस्पोंडेंट थे उनसे पूछा गया कि क्या आप अपने करियर अपॉर्चुनिटी के बारे में अवेयर हैं, तो 40% का आंसर था कि हाँ, जबकि 59.09% लोग थे वो अपने करियर अपॉर्चुनिटी के बारे में बिल्कुल जागरूक नहीं थे। रेस्पोंडेंट से पूछा गया कि आपको एजुकेशन प्राप्त करने में क्या क्या समस्याएं आ रही है, तो 38.63 ने कहा कि स्कूल बहुत दूर है। 22.72% ने माना कि ट्रांसपोर्टेशन की फैसिलिटी अवेलेबल नहीं है, या अवेलेबल है तो उनकी जो टाइमिंग है वो सही नहीं है। 22.72% ने माना कि फैमिली का कुछ ना कुछ अवरोध उत्पन्न हो जाता है, जैसे फसल कटाई के समय लड़कियों को काम में लगा दिया जाता है या कुछ अन्य कारण। और 15.9% ने माना कि कम उम्र में शादी होना भी एजुकेशन में अवरोध उत्पन्न करता है। कुछ बच्चे स्कूल से काफी दिन तक एब्सेंट रहते हैं, तो जब उनसे पूछा गया कि उनका एब्सेंट रहने का कारण क्या है, तो जो फीमेल चाइल्ड थी वो काफी ज्यादा एब्सेंट रहती थी। 68.18% उनका एब्सेंटी परसेंटेज था। तो उन्होंने बताया कि या तो उनको घर के कार्यों में मदद करनी पड़ती है या खेत के कार्यों में मदद करनी पड़ती है, या घर पे जो छोटे भाई बहन हैं उनको संभालने के लिए उन्हें स्कूल से एब्सेंट रहना पड़ता है। वहीं पर केवल 22.72% मेल चाइल्ड ही स्कूल से एब्सेंट रहते थे। अब उनसे पूछा गया कि आपको स्कूल के अंदर किन किन समस्याओं का सामना करना पड़ता है, तो उन्होंने स्कूल का पुअर इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर, टीचर्स का लड़के और लड़की दोनों के बीच में जो इनडिफरेंट एटीट्यूड था वो भी एक समस्या थी, और मुख्य रूप से जो बालिकाओं के माता पिता थे उनका अपोजिट सेक्स के प्रति जो इनसिक्योरिटी थी वो भी एक बड़ा कारण थी। इसके अलावा जो पश्चिमी राजस्थान है, ग्रामीण क्षेत्र है वहां पर, तो वहां पे टीचर्स की संख्या भी क्या है, काफी कम है। तो इन विभिन्न कारणों से क्या था, स्कूलों के अंदर भी काफी समस्याओं का सामना करना पड़ रहा था। तो ये विभिन्न समस्याएं हैं जिनके कारण से पश्चिमी राजस्थान के अंदर विशेष रूप से बालिकाओं की जो ड्रॉप आउट रेट है वो काफी अधिक है। तो सरकार इस दिशा में काफी प्रयास कर रही है और आगे आने वाले समय में हम आशा करते हैं कि धीरे धीरे ये ड्रॉप आउट रेट काफी कम होगी। धन्यवाद।
Hi, greeting for the day. Myself Anuradha Kumbar from Department of Botany from Kisanvir Mahavidyalaya Vayu. I am presenting the paper on impact of COVID-19 on environment. COVID-19 was declared a pandemic on 13 March 2020. The national authorities are adopting travel restrictions and lockdown, which results in the slowdown of economic activities. This article deals with the number of positive effects of pandemic on environment. Introduction. COVID-19 was emerged at the end of December 19 in Wuhan, China. Challenge for the treatment of the disease due to its contagious nature, lack of vaccination, high infectivity. In India, it was reported on 13 January 20 and spread widely. In last few months, pandemic have successfully recovered the environment to large extent and set positive impact on climate change. Materials and methods. Study was performed by referring published literatures, case studies and other organization information. Due to nation lockdown, some important environment changes are observed. The major sector contributing to pollution are transport, industries and restaurants were suspended except emergency services. As a result, air quality improved as less vehicles were on road. Due to lockdown in India, drastic reduction in emission like nitrogen dioxide, carbon monoxide, sulfur dioxide, ozone and particulate matter has been observed. Many birds and insects started appearing on crops and other plants. All these good indication for ecological balance. As people were at home, automatically reduced pollution and environment is reflecting clean and due to less deposition of domestic and industrial waste, water pollution reduced to great extent. Considering municipal solid waste, Pune daily tonnage of MSW has fallen by 29%, while Chennai and Nagpur have dropped by 28% and 25% respectively. Below strategies should be followed use of clean fuel, use of renewable energy, reduce emission, wastewater recycle, locally grown food, ecotourism. Conclusion: it has caused worldwide panic situation but created a very positive impact on world environment. It will increase people awareness of the environmental issue, and it seems to relative and redefine the environmental ethics. Finally, COVID-19 teaches us world together. Acknowledgement. Thanks to the principal Dr. E.B. Bhalerao, Dr. Ramesh Vaidya sir and Ingole ma'am. Reference. We took references from these resources. Thank you.
Hello everyone, I am Dr. Vidya Kaskure. My research paper topic is Distribution of Rainfall in Rain Shadow Zone of Maharashtra State. Orographic rainfall. The word orographic is formed by Greek word oros, which means a mountain. Here is a diagram of mountain which shows that the windward side of a mountain receives heavy rainfall, but the region lying on the leeward side of the mountain receives little rain, and this region is called as rain shadow region. Several researchers such as Sinha, Dhar, Patwardhan and Asnani, Ratna, Sawant, Yadav have studied distribution of rainfall from local to global regions. But after all their reviews, it is observed that the distribution of rainfall in the rain shadow zone of Maharashtra state has not been studied geographically. Hence, this paper constructed monthly, seasonal and annual rainfall distribution for the rain shadow zone of Maharashtra state with the help of 52-year statistical rainfall data of 120 rain gauge stations of 15 districts within the study region. Professor G.T. Trivartha modified and simplified Köppen's classification and explained 6 climatic types, out of which A and B are found in Maharashtra. B is a dry climate. BS is a subtype of a B climate, which means semi-arid region, and which is found in the eastern part of Western Ghat. That region is called as rain shadow zone. Here is the diagram which shows that, this map shows that the study region, it includes 15 districts of Maharashtra. Data collection. For this research paper, meteorological data of 120 rain gauge stations for 52 years is collected from Indian Meteorological Department IMD and also Agriculture Department of Maharashtra State. Physical factors data is collected from socio-economic abstract of districts of the study region. Research methodology. For this research, mean and standard deviation, such statistical methods are used. Findings and discussion. Monthly rainfall distribution maps are here. The map of monthly rainfall distribution cover all stations. The darker shades indicate higher value of rainfall and lighter shades indicate lower value of rainfall. The distribution of rainfall has a variation in all 12 months over different parts of the study region. It is observed that all the months receive a different amount of rainfall in 5 decades average, and it is recognized with the help of average monthly map of study region that trend of monthly rainfall from January to December moves in a clockwise direction. Seasonal rainfall distribution maps are here. There are 4 seasons: winter, pre-monsoon, monsoon and post-monsoon. Winter season map shows the decreasing trend of the rainfall from eastern to the western part of the study region. Pre-monsoon season map shows the decreasing trend of rainfall from southern to northern part of the study region. Monsoon season map shows the decreasing trend of rainfall from the western to eastern part of the study region. And post-monsoon season map shows decreasing trend of rainfall from southern to northern part of the study region. This is the annual rainfall distribution map. Areas receiving very heavy rainfall have an annual rainfall of 2000 mm and above These include 6 stations: Gaganbawda, Mahabaleshwar OBSY, Radhanagari, Igatpuri, Sandgarh and Velle. All these stations are located in the western part of the study region, firmly attached to Western Ghat. Areas receiving high rainfall have rainfall range 1500 mm to 2000 mm, which includes 6 rainfall stations: Azra, Pet, Surgana, Shahuwadi, Mulshi and Patan. Areas receiving moderate rainfall have an average rainfall range between 1000 mm to 1500 mm and also include 6 rainfall stations: Panhara, Vadgaon, Zawdi, Bhor, Nawapur and Akalkua. Area which is in the central and eastern part of the study region have average rainfall range 500 mm to 1000 mm, where low rainfall is observed. The low rainfall stations are more in numbers. It means low rainfall covers many areas of the study region. Areas receiving scanty rainfall have a rainfall range less than 500 mm, which is observed over the 7 stations. These are Sangamner, Malegaon OBSY, Ahmednagar OBSY, Kopargaon, Daun, Vaizapur and Parner. Limitations of the study. Weather data for an extended period is not available freely from Indian Meteorological Department. Second, out of 120 rain gauge stations, complete 52 years monthly and annually rainfall data were available only for 16 stations and 104 stations missed some years data. Due to this data problem, it is tough to conclude the expected result. 3. Cleaning, sorting, analyzing the data took a considerable time, but the research work has a time limit that should be followed. 4th, also enough literature is not available for a rain shadow zone of India as well as Maharashtra. The references are here, which I have used for my study. Thank you.
Namaskar, myself Mukta Katwate, research student, Department of Geography and Research Center, Sri Shivaji Mahavidyalaya, Barshi. I am going to present a research paper on rainfall trends and variability analysis of southern Pune district in India. Climate variability and change are among the major environmental challenges of the 21st century. Rainfall and temperature are often used as important climate parameters to determine the changes in global climate. The trend analysis of temperature, rainfall and other climatic variables on different spatial scales will help in the construction of the future climate scenario. The term intensity of rainfall is used in the context of the rainfall received during 24 hours period. The variability of rainfall influences the agricultural operations, crop rain pattern, irrigation and productivity are related to variability of rainfall. Therefore, an attempt is made here to study rainfall trends, intensity and variability rainfall in the southern Pune district. Then study. The study region is the southern part of the Pune district in Maharashtra state of India. Administratively, the Pune district is divided in 14 tahsil, but present study region is the southern part of Pune district and it includes 8 tahsil. These are Mulshi, Velle, Bhor, Haveli, Purandar, Indapur, Daund and Baramati tahsils. Objective of the present study. The main objective of the present study is to analyze trends of the rainfall in southern Pune district. Second objectives of the study is to study the rainfall intensity and variability in southern Pune district. Data collection and methodology of the present study. To fulfill the objective, data regarding rainfall is obtained from socio-economic review and district statistical abstract of the Pune district for the period of 1991 to 2014. Other information is collected from Gazetteer of Pune district to find out a trend in rainfall, statistical technique, that is coefficient of correlation and regression equation, that is y is equal a plus bx is used. For this calculation, computer work is done on the basis of statistical technique. The result and conclusion are drawn. Rainfall variability is measured by the coefficient of rainfall variability of average of 31 years. The coefficient of rainfall variability is calculated by using formula, which is coefficient of rainfall variability is equal to standard deviation upon the arithmetic mean of rainfall during the 31 years into 100. Result and discussion of this study. Rainfall trends. The coefficient of correlation in this regard is R value is minus 0.0188, which reveals slight negative trend. Coefficient of determination in this regard is 0.0035%. Regression coefficient indicates that an increase of 1 year period causes decreases of rainfall by 6.43 mm during the period of investigation. Both the positive and negative trends of rainfall are found during the period of 1991 to 2014. Intensity of the rainfall of the study area. The South Pune district as a whole has 20.21 intensity of rainfall, but the spatial distribution of intensity of rainfall varies from Tehsil to Tehsil. Rainfall variability. The district as a whole has 33.31% rainfall variability, but spatial distribution varies from Tehsil to Tehsil. Of this study, the study reveals that the region as a whole has marginal negative trend of rainfall in South Pune district, which indicates gradual change in climate due to human interfere in environment. The Tehsil of Bhor, Baramati, Haveli, Mulshi and Velle shows light positive trend of rainfall, whereas the Tehsil of Purandar, Daund and Nindapur shows negative trend of rainfall as they are situated in rain shadow region. The high intensity of rainfall in Velle Tehsil indicates more attention should be paid on soil conservation work. The study also reveals that the district as a whole has over 33% of rainfall variability. So, agriculture without irrigation in this region become uneconomic. That's it. Thank you.
Good afternoon to all. I am Dr. Shubhada Suresh Londhe from Mahatma Phule Mahavidyalaya, Pimpri, Pune, which is located at Maharashtra state in India. The title of my paper is The Development of Khawa Industries in Bhum Tehsil of Usmanabad district, Maharashtra state, India. The study region Usmanabad is an administrative district in the state of Maharashtra in India. It is in the Marathwada region of India. The district headquarters are located at Usmanabad. This primarily rural district occupies an area of 7,569 square kilometer, of which 241.4 square kilometer is urban area and has population of 16,60,311, of which 16.96% were urban as per 2011 census data. Bhum Taluka in Usmanabad district has the solid base of Khawa units having more than 150 registered micro and small units. This micro and small sector plays a vital role in socio-economic aspect and development of the region. Khawa units are more flexible and cater the local needs, contributing effectively in overall development of the region. The objective of my study are to study about the Khawa making industries in Bhum Tehsil, to understand the problems of Khawa making units, and to analyze how government initiative and the local agro entrepreneurs are developing rural economy by proper planning. The study is based on primary and secondary data. Bhum, which is now a well-known Khawa hub of the district, is mainly due to the Khawa production, but there are certain issues and problems of Khawa industries, like non-availability of testing lab, traditional manufacturing process and technology, no hygienic conditions are maintained, lack of proper packaging system, no value addition to the product, time consuming and hard work process, fuel requirement and environmental issues, non-availability of cold storage facility, lack of availability of cold van or refrigeration van facility. To solve all these problems, Government of Maharashtra and some khawa making entrepreneurs take the initiative and change the whole scenario of the area. Under the MSI CDP scheme, that is Maharashtra State Industrial Cluster Development Program, Government of Maharashtra gave the support for establishing CFC, means Common Facility Center in Bhum. Government of Maharashtra gave the grant in aid for establishing the Common Facility Center. The total project cost is rupees 640.42 lakhs. Out of the total project cost, government gave the 80% cost as a grant in aid under the MSI CDP scheme. It helps the khawa makers to overcome the various problems as mentioned. In CFC Center, Government of Maharashtra gave the facilities of cold storage, testing lab, pedha making facility, packaging facility and boiler facility also. Although the Government of Maharashtra and local entrepreneurs take initiative to solve major problems of khawa units, there are a few more things that need to be addressed. That is there is need of skilling to promote R&D, to develop cost-effective technologies, provision of refrigerated van, brand making and training center, etc. These are my suggestions. The conclusion of my paper is there are running 150 registered units of khawa manufacturing located in Bhum. Since khawa is perishable product, its quality declines with time. As such, the khawa units have to sell their product without right value for it. Khawa makers are exploited by the traders in the region due to perishable product. The establishment of CFC along with facilities like cold storage, testing lab, pedha making and packaging facility benefits units for enhancing quality of products, certification and also competitiveness of the units. It promotes export opportunities for the units in the cluster as their product is of good quality. The establishment of CFC along with facilities certainly achieved the objective of Maharashtra State Industrial Development Program. Khawa cluster established at rural area like Bhum is a model for rural development and planning. The all process in cluster intervention leading to major change or major changes in livelihood of the local community due to increase in confidence. Thank you.
नमस्कार, माझे नाव मनीषा गणपत मुठाळ. मी SNDT वुमेन्स युनिव्हर्सिटीमध्ये PhD करत असून मी व माझे गाईड प्राध्यापक डॉक्टर नगराळे सर यांनी मिळून नाशिक जिल्ह्यातील साक्षरता बदलाचा अभ्यास 1991 ते 2011 या संशोधन पेपरवर काम केले आहे. लोकसंख्येच्या विविध वैशिष्ट्यांपैकी साक्षरता हा घटक व्यक्ती, समाज व देशाच्या विविध विकासासाठी अतिशय महत्त्वाचा घटक आहे. साक्षरता म्हणजेच लिहिता वाचता येणे किंवा शिक्षण घेणे होय. साक्षरतेचा प्रभाव हा लोकसंख्येच्या जनन, मत्यता, स्थलांतर, विवाह या महत्त्वपूर्ण अंगावर पडतो. लोकसंख्येच्या गतिमानतेतील ही सर्वच अंग ही व्यक्तीच्या साक्षरता व शैक्षणिक पातळीवर अवलंबून असल्याने विकासात साक्षरतेचा अभ्यास हा अतिशय महत्त्वपूर्ण ठरतो. सदर संशोधन पत्रिकेतील अभ्यासाचे मुख्य उद्दिष्ट म्हणजे नाशिक जिल्ह्यातील 1991 ते 2011 या कालावधीत साक्षरतेत झालेला बदल अभ्यासणे हे होय. या संशोधनात नाशिक जिल्ह्यातील साक्षरता अभ्यासाकरिता प्रामुख्याने द्वितीय स्रोतांचा वापर केला आहे. यात जनगणना अहवाल 1991, 2001 व 11 याचा संदर्भ घेतला असून संकलित माहितीचे वर्गीकरण व त्याद्वारे पृथक्करण करत साक्षरतेतील बदल व कारणे अभ्यासली आहेत. संशोधन अभ्यास क्षेत्र म्हणजे नाशिक जिल्ह्याचे स्थान महाराष्ट्र राज्याच्या उत्तर मध्य भागात असून वायव्य गुजरात सीमेजवळ आहे. जिल्ह्याचे एकूण क्षेत्रफळ 15,530 चौरस किलोमीटर असून जिल्ह्यामध्ये एकूण 15 तालुके आहेत. 2011 नुसार नाशिक जिल्ह्यात एकूण लोकसंख्येपैकी 82.31% इतकी साक्षरता आढळते. साक्षरता दर काढताना एखाद्या प्रदेशाची लोकसंख्या आणि साक्षर व्यक्ती यांच्या सहाय्याने साक्षरता दर काढता येतो. साक्षरता दर बरोबर एकूण लोकसंख्येतील साक्षर लोक भागिले एकूण लोकसंख्या वजा 0 ते 6 वयोगटातील व्यक्ती. भारत, महाराष्ट्र आणि नाशिक जिल्ह्यातील साक्षरता दरातील 1991 ते 2011 या कालावधीतील साक्षरतेच्या दरातील कल अभ्यासला असता असे दिसून येते की भारतातील साक्षरतेचे प्रमाण 1991 मध्ये 52.21% होते ते 2011 मध्ये 74.04 इतके वाढले. 2011च्या जनगणनेनुसार भारतातील सर्वाधिक साक्षरता केरळ राज्यात होती तर सर्वात कमी साक्षरता बिहार, झारखंड राज्यात होती. महाराष्ट्रातील 1991 मध्ये 64.87 साक्षरता होती. त्यापैकी 76.56% पुरुष व 52.32% स्त्रियांचे प्रमाण होते. 2011 मध्ये हे प्रमाण वाढून 82.34% इतके झाले. त्यापैकी 88.38% पुरुष तर 75.87% स्त्रियांचे प्रमाण होते. प्रस्तुत संशोधन पत्रिकेत नाशिक जिल्ह्यातील साक्षरता बदलाचा 1991 ते 2011चा अभ्यास केला आहे. नाशिक जिल्ह्यात 1991 मध्ये 62.33% या साक्षरतेपैकी 73.98% पुरुष व 49.89% स्त्रियांचे प्रमाण होते. तर एकूण लोकसंख्येपैकी नाशिक जिल्ह्यात 53.28% ग्रामीण लोकसंख्या व 78.38% नागरी लोकसंख्येचे प्रमाण आढळते. 2001 मध्ये हे साक्षरतेचे प्रमाण 12.07 ने वाढून 74.4% इतके झाले. यामध्ये 83.7% पुरुष व 64.4% स्त्रियांचे प्रमाण होते. एकूण साक्षरतेमध्ये 67.7% ग्रामीण साक्षरता व 84.6% नागरी साक्षरतेचे प्रमाण आढळते. 2011 मध्ये साक्षरता प्रमाण 7.91% ने वाढून 82.31% झाले. यामध्ये पुरुषांचे प्रमाण 88.17% तर स्त्रियांचे प्रमाण 76.08% इतके झाले. एकूण साक्षरतेमध्ये 77.19% ग्रामीण तर 89.12% नागरी साक्षरतेचे प्रमाण होते. म्हणजेच नाशिक जिल्ह्यात 1991 पासून 2011 पर्यंत साक्षरतेमध्ये 19.98% इतकी वाढ झालेली आढळते. या बदलामध्ये पुरुष साक्षरता 14.19% ने वाढली तर स्त्री साक्षरता 26.19% ने वाढली. यामध्ये नाशिक जिल्ह्यात एकूण 15 तालुके आहेत. त्यापैकी सर्वाधिक साक्षरतेची टक्केवारी नाशिक तालुक्याची 88.98% आहे. याचे कारण या तालुक्यात मोठ्या प्रमाणावर औद्योगिकरण होऊन लोकसंख्या वाढीबरोबरच शैक्षणिक व इतर सेवा सुविधांची वाढ ही मोठ्या प्रमाणावर होऊन साक्षरतेचे प्रमाण वाढले आहे. या उलट नाशिक जिल्ह्यात साक्षरतेची सर्वात कमी टक्केवारी सुरगाणा तालुक्याची 68.15% इतकी आहे. याचे कारण या तालुक्यात आदिवासी बहुल लोकसंख्या जास्त आहे आणि येथील प्राकृतिक रचना अतिशय प्रतिकूल आहे. नाशिक जिल्ह्यातील पेठ तालुक्याचा साक्षरतेचा आढावा घेतला असता मात्र असे आढळून आले की जनगणना 1991 मध्ये साक्षरतेची टक्केवारी 31.11% होती ती 2011 मध्ये 39.92% इतकी जास्त वाढून 71.03% इतकी झाली. याचे कारण या तालुक्यात राबवले गेलेले राष्ट्रीय शैक्षणिक धोरण आणि मोठ्या प्रमाणावर शिक्षण घेण्यासाठी लोकसंख्येचे झालेले स्थलांतर हे आहे. थँक्यू.
Namaskar. Myself Sunena Ravindra Patil. I am a research scholar from Department of Geography, SNDT Women's University, and my co-author of this paper is Dr. Sachin J. Devre. He is a professor and head of Department of Geography, SNDT Women's University, Pune. Today I am going to present my research paper. My research paper title name is Agrotourism, a recent trend and future scope in Pune district, Maharashtra. Agriculture is the backbone of developing country economic, especially India. The villagers are completely dependent on agriculture. Even tourism is a very significant contributor to the GDP of any country and is a crucial tool for employment generation, poverty alleviation and sustainable rural development. A term, agrotourism, is a new face of tourism. What is agrotourism? Agrotourism means agricultural tourism. It refers to the act of visiting a working farm or any agriculture, horticulture or agro business operating of the purpose of enjoyment, education and active involvement in the activity of the farm or operation. Even agrotourism is the latest concept in the Indian tourism industry, which normally occurs on farms. Agrotourism is an innovative agriculture activity related to tourism and agriculture both. This is my rationale of study. In agrotourism sector, increasing the involvement of local communities. This can include the local supply of products, labor and tourism service. There is increasing evidence that more sustainable tourism in rural area can lead to more positive poverty reducing effect. This is my objective of this study. First one is find out growth possibility for agrotourism in Pune district. Then find out exciting scenario and scope in agrotourism from primary research, and to find out location and price expectation of consumers in Pune by conducting survey. So this is my research methodology. Though the main research for this paper is primary research, for this primary survey research is carried out with the sample size of 100. Then secondary research was done by reviewing journals, research paper, newspaper, articles, official website of MART, ATDC and MPDC, etc. Even method used for statistical calculation of the primary data were central tendencies such as arithmetic, mean and mode. Then chi-square test was conducted for studying independence of categories in selecting various choice of location. There are 5 ATC, that is agrotourism centers, are merging in and around the Pune. Though there are almost 5 agrotourism centers emerging up fast, the populated district in Pune can easily accommodate many more such agrotourism centers, and need for such exclusion project is ever rising. So when a survey of 100 respondents, that is people who represent a family, a group, a association or an organization, was done in Pune city, to find out the location, some questions were asked, the response and were tabulated. My first question is, at how much distance you refer the location of agrotourism? It is found that irrespective of type of group, preference is more to the location beyond 40 km from Pune. This is mainly because a group consider this is an picnic exclusion, and they prefer to travel a longer distance as travel as equally an important elements like destination. So applying chi-square test to find independence of categories in making choice, the chi-square statistic is 5.3706. The p-value is 0.251345. The result is not significant at p less than 0.05. Thus, the independent category do not make any significant impact on choice at this sample size. My second question is, how much price per person you would be ready to pay for a day tour of agrotourism farms? Expected affordable price are indicated by various group lies between rupees 850 and rupees 1500, with a mean value of rupees 816. When discussed with a few selected agrotourism expert and also reviewed on internet, they tour price are found in the range of rupees 600 to rupees 800 per person, with minimum group of 10 to 15 people. So this is my finding and conclusion. There were more than 100 prominent agrotourism centers currently operative in Pune district. Population of Pune district is 94.3 lakhs in 2011 census. Population of Pune city has been recorded as 31.2 lakhs. Considering this factor and fast growth of the city, 102 agrotourism center cannot be sufficient to create the need to tourists. Then thus there is a wide scope for growth. Moreover, maximum agrotourism projects are found to be in Purandar, then Daund, Indapur, Ambegaon, Khed Tehsil. Thus there is a wide scope for such ATC in other emerging tehsil like Mawar, Mulshi, Bhor, then Junnar, Shirur, etc. This is a definitely wide scope in this tehsil. A primary study used to support the secondary study revealed that people are ready to travel 40 km or even more from the city to visit such project. The price prescription of this potential consumer also lies within the range of actual price charged by the agrotourism service providers. Thus, if properly promoted and positioned, agrotourism can become a promising financial alternative for the farmers and can be helpful to improving their livelihood. This is my reference which I use for this research paper. Thank you everyone.
Warm greetings to one and all. The title of my presentation is Recent Trends in Urban Geography. This presentation has been made with combined inputs from me, Astha Samarth Kapoor, and Guruprasad Eknath Ghadi under the supervision and guidance of Dr. Sardar Anand Patil. Introduction and definitions. Geography as a subject deals with any phenomena, whether human or physical, present on the surface of the earth, and since geography is incomplete without maps, these phenomena are best represented through diagrammatic representations. Talking about urban geography, it is a recent addition to the several branches of geography. Objectives. There are two objectives: to assess the scope of urban geography and to highlight the new and emerging trends in the subject matter of urban geography. The data sources are primarily secondary data sources like research journals, books, online research articles, etc. Methodology, these are the 4 methodologies that I have included in my study. Review of literature. For fulfilling the given objectives, considerable amount of literature starting from 1963 to 2018 has been reviewed in order to generate a basic understanding of the myriad variety of transformations that have taken place over the years. This has helped the subject evolve better. Urban geography. Urban geography has emerged as a major academic subfield in the recent years. The subject matter of urban geography is rich and varied potpourri. There are 2 undeniable assertions in urban geography. First one being location, size, function, growth, etc. of the city or the urban area, and secondly, its growth, development, history, layout, character, and intensity of land use. The concept of cities is as ancient as the concept of civilization itself, so the urban geographers have been in constant touch ever since. But the most perceptible shift became conspicuous during the 1980s and 1990s, when the socio-cultural as well as the inter- and intra-urban aspects were introduced into the subject through models. Sequential changes in urban geography. Following the chronological course of events, sequential changes start becoming noticeable. Ancient cities had more to do with site and function, whereas after the Industrial Revolution, it saw a growth of port cities, commercial townships, and entrepôts, which had been proliferating trade. The colonies of European countries experienced higher rate of growth of infrastructural development and the rise of hinterlands. There were some more changes in the subject, like the advancement of infrastructure and technology. It created more cities which looked similar. It had similar identities. And this in turn improved the interaction among the world cities. Slowly and gradually, the concept of primate cities, concentric zones, sector models, multiple nuclei, urban conurbations, metropolitan cities, and megalopolises, all of these found a logical coherence and place in the subject. Recognizing the new urban geography. The new urban geography presented itself as a sum total of contemporary transitions so as to adopt an accommodating outlook. This led to a metamorphosed inclusion of quantitative techniques like the nearest neighbor analysis, NGISIS, nodal network analysis, transport efficiency, land pricing models, etc. Technology shows and carves out new pathways. The accelerated growth of computer technology paved the way for addition and assimilation of computer-aided designs, modeling and entropy analysis, overlay techniques, image interpretation, LULC, and all this could be included into the subject through GIS and remote sensing softwares. Globalized urban view is the way forward. Urban studies in the present times have assumed a globalized appearance encompassing the concepts of smart cities, livable cities, sustainable cities. These have become even more livable through the application of improved disaster management techniques like the Sendai framework. It is very recent. Then construction of heat-resistant buildings. Also, HVAC houses. The concept of LBSAP, that is the Local Biodiversity Strategy and Action Plans, is an extremely recent study which has been included into the urban studies, and it has prompted the urban planners to design such urban landscapes which are taking into cognizance biodiversity, which is very essential, and this is helping in environmental protection and preservation. With the help of site suitability analysis, the geographers can now effectively incorporate the above-mentioned changes into the subject. End note. In a nutshell, it can be summarized that urban studies have come a very long way from the period of early civilization. The journey has been cumbersome but really very fascinating. Urban geography was a late addition to the already existing branches of geography, but it has emerged as one of the most significant. It encompasses details from the past, the present, as well as from the future. Its highly assimilating nature has allowed its elevation from the status of a mere science of site, situation, function, layout, etc., to the science of modeling with optimal use of statistics, cartography, GIS, and remote sensing, thus converting the subject into an efficacious tool which facilitates the process of planning and decision making, helping the planners and the decision makers. These are the photographs of modern cities, the urban landscapes. These have found a profound place in urban geography. I end my presentation over here. And thank you so much for your kind attention.
Hello everyone, my name is Pratnya and my research paper is Special Study of Weather Change in Corona Pandemic in India in 2020. I'm a PhD student, Department of Geography, Mumbai University. Introduction. Here I mentioned the basic concept of weather and climate change, where climate is a vast concept and weather is a daily changes in temperature, pressure of that particular area, and climate is a continuous observation of changing weather of that particular region more than 20 to 30 years, and that time we conclude that that is a particular climate of that particular region. So now it is what happened today, we immediately use the word climate change, but sudden even there is a sudden change in weather, we need not to come in direct conclusion that there is a climate change. So these some areas. Following are some of the objective of my studies: to study the air quality in COVID situation, period of emergence of cyclone, overall observation of rainfall and winter season, impact of COVID on climate changes, and conclusion. So here I collect some data from the IMD department of Pune and the um, Ministry of Earth Science. Some important study of the cyclones, Amphan, Nisarga, and other some important cyclones form in the Arabian Ocean and Bay of Bengal. The importance of this cyclone is very important for us. Here, cyclone Nisarga and path of cyclone Amphan. So cyclone Nisarga is formed in Arabian Sea and in June 3rd June 2020 it's occurred in Arabian Ocean, and Amphan is in Bay of Bengal in May. Actually, these two cyclones are first is considered as a super cyclone, and after 2 to 3 days, when the velocity come down and the speed come down, then they per hour. It means when there is the normal cyclone, it is considered as a not so severe, but it is a super cyclone. For the study of this cyclone is very important part of my studies. Then how the air quality changes in corona lockdown period, that is very important, and PM level, it means a particular particular matters, it is 2.5 pollution level is rich, is the worst condition in India, and it's come down, it's a decrease in the first time in the first 3 lockdown, and the PM level is 10 also decrease, and so it is very important thing to study all these things. Here some photo I it means showed some photo where how to decrease the air quality, sorry, how to increase the air quality in the given picture. Next is important is this is a NASA photo of 2000. There are 6 photos: 2018, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. In these 20, so the last photo is very important, where all the yellow patches and red patches and brown patches are vanish, and only the blue sky reflection is over the Himalayan mountain regions. It is one of the impact of corona pandemic. That is very important part of my study. Next is a picture of Mumbai city. Then here what is the importance of the clean air on environment? That is one of the important part of my conclusion. And the last part of my conclusion is we need not to search the God in temples. We change our eyesight, or we change ourselves and change our way of searching God in human being or in other peoples. Those are considered as the main heroes of our societies. That is very important thing. Thank you very much for participation. Me allowed me to participate in this conference.
Good afternoon to everybody. My name is Bhakti Maskar from Acharya Marathe College, Chembur. My topic of research is the analysis of policies related to the sustainable lifestyle in India. The aim of this research paper is to analyze various policies and practices related to the sustainable lifestyle in India and their awareness. Objectives: first, to understand the concept of sustainable lifestyle with special reference to India. Second, to discuss various policies and practices related to sustainable lifestyle in the recent year implemented by government and non-government organizations. Third, to understand the level of awareness among the people about the policies and practices related to the sustainable lifestyle. The methodology: this research paper is based on the primary and secondary data sources. The various reports, newspaper articles and research articles are also referred. The primary data of 100 samples were collected with questionnaire method through the Google Forms. The questions are formed on the basis of practices and policies awareness related to the sustainable lifestyle. The random sampling method is used in the research. Now, the eco-friendly lifestyle is a part of the environmental conservation and sustainability. It is also known as the sustainable lifestyle. India is facing different environmental problems like global warming, ozone depletion, deforestation, acid rain, and increase in the frequency and severity of the natural disasters. In this present situation, there is a need for implementation of sustainable lifestyle at personal level as well as at national level. The different government and non-government policies are also based on the sustainable development in the recent year. In case of India, the major policies with sustainable development goals such as Sashakta Bharat, Sabal Bharat, Swachh Bharat, Swasth Bharat, समग्र भारत, सक्षम भारत, सतत भारत, संथन भारत, सतत भारत, संपूर्ण भारत आणि समृद्ध भारत. All these policies are based on the sustainable goal which reduces the inequality between the people with reference to access to the nutrition, access to the child health, drinking water supply, sanitation, pure drinking water supply, electricity, housing, and especially with special reference to the vulnerable people. Now, it is observed with the survey that the 60% of the youth was not knowing about these policies, whatever we have discussed just now. Second, very important observation is 20% of the youth was only aware about Niti Aayog, which based on the sustainable goals. As far as the eco-friendly lifestyle is concerned, 80% of the youth was knowing about the sustainable lifestyles. 87% of the youth were knowing about the sustainable lifestyle related to the energy resources. 68% of the youth was knowing about the sustainable practices related to the forest resources. 68% of the youth was knowing about the sustainable lifestyle related to the forest resources. So the conclusion is, today we have to have the sustainable lifestyle in our day-to-day practices. Thank you.
Good evening to all. I am Mrs. D. Shanbagapriya, Research Scholar, Bharat Women's College, Chennai. My guide is Dr. R. Shanti Devi, Assistant Professor, Bharat Women's College. Today I am paper presenting on recent trends in SWAYAM and NRSC using for research work. Abstract of my study is SWAYAM is in the indigenous platform. It hosts various courses based on curriculum, continuing education and skill. SWAYAM platform is world's largest online free e-learning platform. Its quality by covering school, vocational, undergraduate, postgraduate, engineering and other professional courses also. And also NRSC is also engaged in executing aerial remote sensing and discussion support for disaster management. It's also mainly used for the survey, scanner survey, aeromagnetic surveys, large scale base map, topographic and cadastral level mapping. Keywords of my study is SWAYAM and NRSC. It's also thesis and dissertation data collections for research. Introduction of my study is SWAYAM is basically an integrated for distance education that is aimed at offering all the courses from school level, UG to post-graduation level also. NRSC is a national remote sensing center, support various remote sensing tasks specific to the regions as well as the national level. Aim of my study is these free online courses can help students fulfill general education requirements, convenience and flexibility. Online courses is SWAYAM and NRSS give students the opportunity to plan, study, time around the rest of their day. Instead of the other way around, students can study and work at their convenience and also used for research scholar for the research work. Objective of my study to establish an online platform encouraging effective communication between the instructors and students to provide quality educational program relevant to the students' future career of their desired courses. SWAYAM app. In SWAYAM portal also I present in the PPT swayam.government.in. There is 9 national coordinates in SWAYAM. All Indian Council of Technical Education, National Program on Technical and Enhanced Learning, University Grants Commission, Educational Communication, National Council of Education, Research and Training, National Institute of Open Schooling, Indira Gandhi National Open University, Indian Institute of Management Bangalore, National Institute of Technical Teachers Training and Research. Major features of the government's online education platforms Swayam includes course type and duration is important, and course components, materials, assignments, quiz, online discussions, learning doubt, clearing the doubts, eligibility, anyone, anyway, anywhere, anytime can apply for this Swayam course. Course fees is free cost only. Certification. After completing the examination, certificate will be successful completion of the course will be provided. Credits in Swayam also UGC credits or presents. I am given the PPT screenshot in the procedure of registering the Swayam registration. They need to click register button provided on the top of the home page and also used in login in Facebook, Google or Microsoft. Then user create the user ID, email ID, using email ID. Learner account on Swayam will be created finally. Swayam technical requirements. The students must have the system requirements, desktop or laptop, operation system, port 1935 or TMP, browser, Chrome, Internet Explorer, Firefox, Opera, like that. Student can also download the content. Swayam test evaluation and certification. 4 weeks will be the courses will be conducted. Like that, whatever notes we will be providing, Swayam will be providing, and the certificate will be sent to the parent institute. How to check the Swayam test? Using mail ID, participant ID, view the result. The course information page will tell you if there is a session. Upcoming courses, in progress courses, self-paced courses can be joined at any time. If you enroll in an upcoming courses, the courses provider will send you a reminder mail when the course begins. These are the certificate models of Swayam. NRSC, National Remote Sensing Center. In this, aerial service and digital mapping will be provided. Regional remote sensing centers also is there. For especially GIS applications, Geographical Information System applications will be digital image processing also in this, and geospatial technology and training program also conducted in NRSC. This NRSC mainly used for PhD research scholar for the map processing. In Google browsing data on NRSC, you type the portal. The portal will become National Remote Sensing Center. Then you type web portals, click on that. I am circle it in that screenshot pages, and username, new username you want to select. Then you select the latitude, longitude for the selected areas, whatever you want it, and draw using, and you can draw the using the sketch also, and by handwriting, and using the mouse itself you can click that resolution eye. Select the satellite and sensor and enter the type periods, whatever periods you want. Colored square represent the footprint of the satellite image. Final result will become declare like this. Sponsored responder. ISRO is mainly processing the Swayam and NRSC. These process will be all the courses like that UG, PG and research scholars. Those all are presenting in this and useful for the nowadays presenting COVID times. We can in home itself we can study and gain knowledge in this Swayam and NRSC. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for giving the valuable opportunity for me. Thank
Good morning to all of you. Today on 20th March 2021, on One Day International Online Offline Conference on Recent Trends in Geography, I am Dr. Ratnaprabha Jadhav from SNDT Women's University presenting the research paper on role of PMC teachers in home visit survey in preventing community spread of COVID-19, Pune, Maharashtra. In India, very first case of COVID-19 was reported on 30th Jan 2020 in the state of Kerala, and 2 people in Pune city were tested COVID positive on 9th March 2020. This is the graph which shows the variation of percentage of growth rate in the number of the confirmed COVID-19 cases in the state of Maharashtra and Pune. The second graph which shows the percentage of death rate in Maharashtra and in Pune city. This is the location map which contains the 15 administrative wards of PMC. The main objective of this paper, that is to study the role of PMC teachers in home visit survey in preventing the spread of COVID-19 conducted by PMC. The well-structured questionnaire, Google Forms, newspaper, published data, official websites, academic literatures are used to achieve this objective. The purposive and convenient sampling techniques of the size of the sample, 400, were selected from the various wards, and the simple statistical techniques as well as the casual analysis to assess the success of home visit surveys. The municipal corporation as well as the district administrative have implemented the various measures to avoid the community transmission. In Bhilwara and in Maharashtra, Islampur, Bhilwara pattern and Islampur pattern, these are the well-known patterns which contains the door-to-door survey. And the motto of the Maharashtra state was "My family, my responsibility." Here the same pattern, Bhilwara and Islampur pattern, that was applied in Pune PMC. PMC teaching staff, they were merged in the health department as health workers, and the work has been allotted to PMC teachers from 27th of March 2020. The role of teachers in COVID-19 in the pandemic situation, that was very great. Great salute to them, because they actually work on the road, and they are known as the Corona warriors to fight against the spread of COVID-19. The door-to-door visit in the located zones, as well as this work that was done by PMC teachers. The jurisdiction of work, that is from the working zone, these were safe zones, hotspot zones. In the working days are from 1 day to 350 days. This table shows the percentage of the respondees work and the total working days. When we see the demographic profiles here, it is very proud to me that is 68% of female teachers, they were actively participated in this work. The permanent teacher, Shikshak Sevak, and temporary, which includes the assistant administrative officer, supervisor, headmaster, graduate teacher, assistant teacher, nursery teacher, nursery sevika, watchman, peon, all the staff members, these work as health workers. The nature of work of PMC teachers, that the slide that is shown in the slides: family survey, home visit survey, supervision survey, data entry, data updates, taking the suspected patients to quarantine center, the surveying on the quarantine center, surveying on supervision on the swab collection center, taking the suspected patients to quarantine center, isolation center, inquiry of pregnant women's health inquiry of comorbid patient details, inquiry of senior citizens, working on COVID treatment centers, swab collection and the COVID testing centers. All types of the works has been done by these the health workers, particularly by the PMC teachers in this pandemic situation. All we are safe in the house. This is due to the devotion work of PMC teachers, PMC staffs in this pandemic situation. The PMC teachers are working as task force and corona warriors since the date of appointment 27th of March 2020, and the home visit survey has been effectively and efficiently deployed by them. The main suggestion that is the PMC teachers have worked tirelessly, and their work needs to be recognized by the PMC authorized. Thank you.
नमस्कार, मी प्राध्यापक डॉक्टर कल्पना देशमुख, बाबाजी दाते कला आणि वाणिज्य महाविद्यालय, यवतमाळ, महाराष्ट्र. माझ्या शोधनिबंधाचा विषय आहे यवतमाळ जिल्ह्यातील लोकसंख्या व ओलिताखालील क्षेत्राच्या असमानतेचा भौगोलिक अभ्यास. भारत हा शेतीप्रधान देश आहे आणि कोणत्याही देशाची अर्थव्यवस्था जेव्हा शेतीवर अवलंबून असते तेव्हा त्या लोकसंख्येच्या तुलनेत उपलब्ध असणारं लागवडीखालील क्षेत्र आणि ओलिताखालील क्षेत्र या बाबी अभ्यासणं महत्त्वाचं ठरतं. म्हणून हा विषय मी अभ्यासासाठी निवडलेला आहे. त्यात भारतातील शेती ही मोसमी पावसावर अवलंबून असल्यामुळे त्याला जुगार म्हटलं जातं आणि अशा परिस्थितीमध्ये भारतीय शेती ही उदरनिर्वाहाची आणि कोरडवाहू प्रकारची आहे. त्यामुळे शेती व्यवसायाला जर व्यापारी स्वरूप द्यायचं असेल तर शेत जमीन ओलिताखाली आणणं हे फार आवश्यक आहे. त्या दृष्टीने महाराष्ट्रातील पश्चिम विदर्भाचा म्हणजे विशेषतः यवतमाळ जिल्ह्याचा अभ्यास करायचं मी ठरवलं, कारण या जिल्ह्यामध्ये पाणी पुरवठा योजनांचा अभाव आहे आणि एकूण लोकसंख्या आणि लागवडीखालील जमीन, एकूण लोकसंख्या आणि ओलिताखालील क्षेत्र यांचा अभ्यास करताना यवतमाळ हा पाण्याचा दुर्भिक्ष असणारा जिल्हा असल्यामुळे या जिल्ह्याची निवड मी केलेली आहे. गेल्या काही वर्षामध्ये यवतमाळ जिल्ह्यात पाण्याचं प्रचंड दुर्भिक्ष आहे आणि त्यामुळे पाणी फाउंडेशन मध्ये सुद्धा काम करण्यात हा जिल्हा अग्रेसर आहे. या दृष्टिकोनातून यवतमाळ जिल्ह्यामध्ये ओलिताखालील आणि लागवडीखालील क्षेत्राचं प्रमाण कशा पद्धतीचं आहे हे अभ्यासण्याचा प्रयत्न केला. सारणी क्रमांक 1 मध्ये यवतमाळ जिल्ह्यातील ओलिताखालील क्षेत्र तालुकानिहाय दर्शवलेलं आहे. जिल्ह्याच्या एकूण ओलिताखालील क्षेत्रापैकी सर्वाधिक ओलिताखालील क्षेत्र 15.19% म्हणजे 5000 हेक्टर आहे. त्या खालोखाल वणी येथे 10.63% म्हणजे 35,000 हेक्टर आहे. यवतमाळ आणि दारव्हा तालुक्यात ओलिताखालील क्षेत्र 9.42 म्हणजे 31,000 हेक्टर आहे आणि यवतमाळ जिल्ह्यातील उमरखेड तालुक्यात ओलिताखालील क्षेत्राचं प्रमाण फारच कमी आहे. ते फक्त 2% म्हणजे 600 हेक्टर इतकं असलेलं दिसतं. नकाशा क्रमांक 2 मध्ये दर 1000 लोकसंख्येमागे ओलिताखालील क्षेत्र दर्शवलेलं आहे. ओलिताखालील क्षेत्राचं प्रमाण यवतमाळ जिल्ह्यात फारच कमी आहे. याचे 5 गटात विभाजन केले. दर 1000 लोकसंख्येमागे ओलिताखालील क्षेत्राचं 40 हेक्टर पेक्षा जास्त असणारे प्रदेश जे आहेत याच्यामध्ये पुसदचा पूर्वेकडचा भाग, पश्चिम भाग, नेर, बाभुळगाव आणि यवतमाळचा पश्चिमेकडील भाग यांचा समावेश होतो. दर 1000 लोकसंख्येमागे ओलिताखालील क्षेत्र 31 ते 40 हेक्टर असणारे प्रदेश म्हणजे पुसद, महागाव, दिग्रस, कळंब, राळेगाव, पांढरकवडा यांचा काही भाग येतो. साधारणतः मध्यम स्वरूपाचे ओलित क्षेत्र असणारा प्रदेश फारच कमी म्हणजे दर 1000 लोकसंख्येमागे 21 ते 30 हेक्टर ओलिताचे क्षेत्राचे प्रमाण असणारे प्रदेश हे नेर, बाभुळगाव, दारव्हा, पुसद, महागाव, दिग्रस, आरणी, घाटंजी आणि झरी जामणीचा थोडा भाग या प्रदेशामध्ये येतो. यवतमाळ जिल्ह्याचे जास्तीत जास्त क्षेत्र असं आहे की जे 1000 लोकसंख्येमागे ओलिताचे क्षेत्र फारच कमी आहे. म्हणजे न्यूनतम 2 गटांपैकी 11 ते 20 हेक्टर प्रमाण असणारे सर्वाधिक भाग आहेत. यामध्ये साधारणतः 11 ते 20 हेक्टर ओलिताखालील क्षेत्र असणारे प्रदेश यवतमाळ, आरणी, घाटंजी मिळून जिल्ह्याचा काही मध्य भाग आणि जवळपास दारव्ह्याचा संपूर्ण भाग या गटामध्ये येतो आणि झरी जामणीचा सुद्धा भाग येतो. तर दर 1000 लोकसंख्येमागे अगदी न्यूनतम म्हणजे 1 ते 10 हेक्टर क्षेत्र असणारा भागही बराचसा आहे. यात नेर, यवतमाळ, कळंब, घाटंजी, महागाव, उमरखेड, झरी जामणी, मारेगाव, वणी यांचा समावेश होतो. थोडक्यात यवतमाळ जिल्ह्यात एकंदरीतच ओलिताखालील क्षेत्राचे प्रमाण कमी आहे आणि सर्वाधिक ओलिताखालील क्षेत्र म्हणजे दर 1000 लोकसंख्येमागे 40 ते 50 हेक्टर क्षेत्र सबंध यवतमाळ जिल्ह्यात काही तुरळक भाग वगळता फार कमी आहे. दर 1000 लोकसंख्येमागे 30,000 हेक्टर पर्यंत 30 हेक्टर पर्यंत हे प्रमाण असलेलं आपल्याला दिसून येतं. सारणी क्रमांक 2 नुसार यवतमाळ जिल्ह्याच्या एकूण क्षेत्रफळापैकी 30 ते 30.63% क्षेत्र असं आहे की ज्या ठिकाणी 30.66% लोकसंख्या वास्तव्य करते आणि त्या ठिकाणी दर 1000 लोकसंख्येमागे ओलिताखालील क्षेत्राचं प्रमाण फक्त 10% आहे. 11 ते 20 हेक्टर ओलित क्षेत्र असणाऱ्या गटाचं क्षेत्रफळ 34.75% असून या गटाची लोकसंख्या 40% येते. 21.66% क्षेत्रफळ असणाऱ्या भागात लोकसंख्या प्रमाण हे 19.66% आहे आणि ओलिताचे प्रमाण या ठिकाणी 21 ते 30 हेक्टर इतके आहे. यवतमाळातील फार कमी म्हणजे 7.65% चौरस किलोमीटर क्षेत्र असं येतं की ज्यामध्ये 6.24% लोकसंख्या वास्तव्य करीत असून या प्रदेशात 1000 लोकसंख्येमागे ओलिताखालील क्षेत्राचं प्रमाण 30 ते 40 हेक्टर आहे. अशा प्रकारे ज्या ठिकाणी 5.12% चौरस किलोमीटर क्षेत्रफळ असं येतं की जिथे ज्या जिल्ह्यामध्ये 3.40% लोकसंख्या राहते आणि दर 1000 लोकसंख्येमागे ओलिताखालील क्षेत्राचं प्रमाण 41 ते 50 हेक्टर आहे. फारच कमी लोकसंख्या प्रमाण असं येतं की लागवडीखालील क्षेत्राचं प्रमाण ओलिताखालील क्षेत्राचं प्रमाण जेथे जास्त आहे. उलट ओलित क्षेत्र कमी असणाऱ्या भागामध्ये लोकसंख्या जास्त राहते आणि ओलित क्षेत्र जास्त असणाऱ्या प्रदेशामध्ये लोकसंख्या कमी वास्तव्य असणारी दिसून येते. आणि त्यावरून आपण असे निष्कर्ष काढले आहे की यवतमाळ जिल्ह्यात दर 1000 लोकसंख्येमागे ओलिताखालील क्षेत्राचे प्रमाण कमी आहे. दुसरा निष्कर्ष आहे दर 1000 लोकसंख्येमागे सर्वाधिक ओलिताखालील क्षेत्र 40,000 हेक्टर फारच कमी म्हणजे फक्त 4 तहसीलींच्या भागात आहे. तिसरा निष्कर्ष आपला आहे यवतमाळ जिल्ह्याच्या फार मोठ्या प्रदेशात दर 1000 लोकसंख्येमागे ओलिताखालील क्षेत्र 10,000 हेक्टर पेक्षा सुद्धा कमी आहे. आणि चौथा निष्कर्ष आहे यवतमाळ जिल्ह्याच्या एकूण ओलिताखालील क्षेत्रापैकी सर्वाधिक ओलिताखालील क्षेत्र पुसद तालुक्यात व उमरखेड तालुक्यात सर्वात कमी 2% इतकं येतं. साधारणतः वाढत्या लोकसंख्येमध्ये अन्नधान्याची मागणी वाढते, परंतु वाढत्या लोकसंख्येनुसार शेतीखालील आणि वनाखालील क्षेत्र हे आता वसाहतीखाली यायला लागलेलं आहे. हेही सत्य आपल्याला नाकारता येणार नाही. शहरांचे आकार वाढायला लागले. पूर्वी शहरालगतच्या शेतीमध्ये भाजीपाला, फळबागा, चारा, दुग्ध व्यवसाय चालायचा. तेथे ओलिताखालील जमिनीचं प्रमाण फार मोठ्या प्रमाणावर असे. आज प्रत्येक शहरालगतच्या भागामध्ये प्लॉट्स पडतात आहे आणि त्याची 2 कारण आहेत. प्लॉट्समध्ये होणारा आर्थिक नफा जास्त आहे आणि शहरीकरणाच्या वाढीमुळे प्लॉट्सला मागणीही जास्त आहे. परिणामी ओलिताखाली येणाऱ्या शहरानजीकच्या फळबागा आणि भाजीपाल्याची शेती यांचे प्रमाण कमी होत जाऊन लोकसंख्येच्या तुलनेत ओलिताखालील जमिनीचे प्रमाण सुद्धा घटलेले दिसून येते. एकूण शेतीखालील जमिनीमध्ये ओलिताखालील शेतीचे प्रमाण अधिक असणे हे शेती उद्योगाच्या दृष्टीने विकासात्मक आणि आर्थिक लाभाचे असते, कारण त्यातून रोजगाराच्या संधी सुद्धा निर्माण होत असतात. पण शेतकऱ्यांच्या गरजा सुद्धा पूर्ण होत असतात. बाजारभावाचा फायदा मिळत असतो. एकूण लोकसंख्येच्या तुलनेत शेतीयोग्य जमिनीचे प्रमाण व ओलिताखालील क्षेत्राचे प्रमाण यावर शेती व्यवसायाचा आर्थिक लाभ अवलंबून असतो. आणि म्हणून यवतमाळ जिल्ह्यातील एकूण लोकसंख्या दर 1000 लोकसंख्येमागे ओलिताखालील क्षेत्र आणि लागवडीखालील क्षेत्र याचा अभ्यास करण्याचा प्रयत्न या शोध निबंधामध्ये केलेला आहे. धन्यवाद.